Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News of this Wednesday, the 4th day of June, 2025. And since we were with you last, three huge stories have come across the wire that continue to shape our world exactly like the Bible says it will be in the last days. You really can't make this stuff up. So let's get right to them. All right, Donald Trump explains a lengthy phone call with Vladimir Putin. This is from CBS News. Also, elections on the horizon. This is a question. Shas, that's the one of the ultra-Orthodox parties in Israel, is to support a Knesset dissolution. Now, this is could be fake news, but at least they're talking about this from Israel National News, meaning the Israelis would have to go to an election and Netanyahu would be part of a caretaker government. And boy, that would have huge implications. And as we're going to see, the phone call with Putin has huge implications too. And a third story with huge implications, Turkey is backing Syria's military and has no immediate withdrawal plans to leave Syria. And again, this is from their defense minister, and this is very worrisome to Israel. And as we know, Turkey will be a major player in last days Bible prophecy invading Israel from the north, along with Russia and Iran. So these things are falling into place in an amazing way. All right, let's look at this first story. This one has so many parts to it and so much. Well, let's just get to it. Trump explains a lengthy phone call with Putin. This is from CBS News. President Trump said Wednesday that he spoke with Russian President Vladimir Putin by phone for over an hour, and Putin told him that he plans to respond to Ukraine's drone strike on Russian air bases. In other words, peace isn't coming very soon, is it? Mr. Trump announced the call and details of the conversation on his social media platform, Truth Social. Ukraine on Sunday, as we've talked about here, launched a drone attack deep into Russian territory that security officials said destroyed about 40 military bombers. Mr. Trump also said Putin suggested he will participate in negotiations with Iran over their nuclear capabilities as the U.S. works to keep nuclear weapons out of Iranian hands. Ceasefire talks between Ukraine and Russia have stalled, and Mr. Trump has expressed frustration with both Putin and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. I've just finished speaking by telephone with President Vladimir Putin of Russia, Mr. Trump wrote. The call lasted approximately 1 hour and 15 minutes. We discussed the attack on Russia's docked airplanes by Ukraine and also various other attacks that have been taking place by both sides. It was a good conversation. Here comes the but, though, but not a conversation that will lead to immediate peace. President Putin did say, and very strongly, that he will have to respond to the recent attack on the airfields. He said, now here's what's really interesting. We also discussed Iran and the fact that time is running out on Iran's decision pertaining to nuclear weapons, which must be made quickly. That is, the decision must be made quickly. Mr. Trump continues. I stated to President Putin that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and on this, I believe that we were in agreement. President Putin suggested that he will participate in the discussions with Iran so that he could perhaps be helpful in getting this brought to a rapid conclusion. Now, that's the White House take on this. This is from CBS News. And what's going on now in the Israeli media is almost just the opposite. There's stories that Trump has suggested that Putin get involved, help be a mediator because of what the Ayatollah said today. They're going to continue to enrich uranium, showing Trump's weakness, on and on and on. And it's amazing how they're printing these stories with no basis whatsoever and putting them online. But the bottom line of all this is that Trump is not in control. That he has to, he's so desperate he has to talk to Vladimir Putin to get him to help to get Iran to sign some type of deal, and that's not what the CBS version says at all. What the White House mentioned, what was happened, or what has happened from the call between Putin and Trump. It was Putin who suggested helping Trump, not the other way around. Now, if this happens, we'd be very, very surprised. But it just shows what a mess everything's in. And so we asked the question, did Putin truly offer to help with discussions for a nuclear deal? This doesn't seem very likely, does it? Furthermore, with the statements of the Ayatollah today, sooner or later, and here's the key, Trump must face the fact that Iran has no plans to stop enriching uranium. So he must answer the simple question sooner rather than later. What does he plan to do now? Because he's been saying on and on and on. If Iran won't stop enriching uranium, we're going to destroy their facilities there, their nuclear facilities. And this is not an empty threat. Well, the Ayatollah today, as we saw in our first episode of Breaking News, said there's no way we're going to, stop enriching uranium. That's part of our right. That's part of who we are. And who does Trump think he is to tell us we have to do this? Well, what's next? And we will wait and see. But anyway, the Putin statement, it's done a couple of things. Number one, actually, Trump posted something, and and then he withdrew it. He took it off what he had posted about some of the things that he had said with Vladimir Putin today. So it's really a confusing situation right now. Like we bring you the stories here every day. Many times we don't know what to make out of them because you've got total contradictory stories of one side versus the other side of what's going on. But what we can tell is this: there is confusion. Something has to be done soon with respect to Iran, United States, and then Israel. But speaking of Israel, oh boy, this is exactly the thing they didn't need. This is from Israel National News. Elections on the horizon, Shas, and that's one of the ultra-Orthodox parties, to support the Knesset dissolution. The Knesset, of course, is Israeli parliament. Now, this could be fake news. It's possible they haven't decided this yet, but they are discussing this. But here's the story from Israel. This is Israel National News. Shas ministers and MKs weigh support for new elections as pressure mounts over conscription bill. Netanyahu is set to meet Edelstein in a last-ditch bid to avert coalition collapse. Ministers and Knesset members from the Haredi Shas party met on Wednesday outside the Knesset building to discuss the party's stance on the future of the government amidst the crisis surrounding the conscription bill. The conscription bill is basically saying that these ultra-Orthodox men who have been in the past not suspect, not having to participate in the draft, they've been giving they're draft dodgers to put it in a way, but they've been given an exemption for because their job is to sit around and study the Torah all day and all night. They get, the government subsidizes them to some degree, but they don't fight in the war. And this is one of the things many of the citizens of Israel have been very, very upset about because there should be a defense from all the citizens there of the country. And this large percentage of able young men that aren't fighting because supposedly they're not necessarily conscientious objectors, but they feel they should rather study the Torah than fight. It's gotten to the place. We had an article about a week ago I was going to do, never got to it. Do you realize in Israel, 20% of the fighting force, 20% of those who fight are females? Females, 20%. And they're doing a great job. But you've got these able-bodied men who are these draft dodger guys that sit around, and just read the Torah, study that all day, and don't get involved with the defense of Israel. And the people, the great majority of the people don't like that. The problem for Netanyahu is his coalition is put together by these two ultra-Orthodox groups. And if they would bolt from his coalition, then the government would fail, and they'd have to have new elections. So this is what's the mess that they're in. In other words, they've got this bill coming up that's going to force, these people to get involved, to do some type of military service. And basically, well, as the article goes on to say, it seems to be what they're trying to do. The members of the coalition accuse Edelstein, he's one pushing it, of eliminating chances of reaching an agreement with the Haredi parties, and that he makes demands that participant negotiations called draconian. In other words, they must become involved in in the military there. They must not get the deferment as they've been having. And again, Netanyahu has to bend and bow to these parties because, again, if he doesn't, they'll just, leave the government and he'll be left. He can't put a coalition together without these two parties, is the bottom line. One of them has already said they're going to bolt. The other one has not necessarily said that. So the bottom line of all this, will they or won't they cause the government to dissolve? That's what we don't know. And it's secondary, the issue they're debating over. Again, it has to do with the draft status of these ultra-Orthodox young men. But it is in their power to leave the coalition if they want to. But if they do this, it couldn't come at a worse time, seemingly, because what would happen? Elections would be called. They would be forced to be called because the government would not have a mandate from, have to have at least 61 seats in the parliament, Knesset out of the 120. And if they can't get the 61 seats, and new elections will be called for in a couple months. And then in the meantime, Netanyahu would be a caretaker government. And let me tell you, that takes away so much of his authority because he's facing Hamas, of course, he's facing Iran, all these huge things right now they're in the midst of. So the worst thing that could happen to Israel is now having their, their Knesset, their parliament dissolve, and then they go to elections and it would neutralize basically the power that Netanyahu has. Now he still can do things, But even then, there's some question about what his power would be if his government is only a caretaker government. So you see the problem here if this ultra Orthodox party does decide to bolt. Now, there's some articles that saying they have decided, others are saying they're talking about it. We don't know yet, but the point we're making, if it does happen, it's not going to be pretty. All right, then number three, Turkey. Turkey backing Syria's military has no immediate withdrawal plans, defense minister says. By the way, there's been a number of stories. There was a couple of rockets sent over to Israel from Syria today. Israel has been bombing certain areas of Syria. They're blaming the new government. They're not, doing enough to take care of the problems that are there that are facing Israel from Syria. And Turkey is doing a hard line here. Remember, we talked about they're going to be building more bases here. They're going to settle in. At the same time, the U.S., we had this story yesterday, the 8 bases they had in the Middle East and in Turkey, and not in Turkey, but that in the Middle East, 7 of them will be gone, be disbanded. They only have 1 base left. In other words, the U.S. is leaving and Turkey is settling in is the whole issue. Well, what does the Bible say? In the last days, Turkey will be one of the huge participants of this last days invasion of Israel, and the United States is nowhere to be seen. Exactly what's happening. And so basically what it says, Turkey is training and advising Syria's military and helping improve its defenses and has no immediate plans for withdrawal or relocation of its troops. Again, the defense minister told Reuters this. Turkey has emerged as a key foreign ally of Syria's new government since rebels, some of them turned back for years by Ankara, ousted former President Bashar Assad in December to end his family's 5-decade rule. Again, some of these rebel groups have been backed by Ankara for years and years. Ankara, of course, capital of Turkey. And because of this, once they, ousted Assad, Turkey now has the inroads with this new government. It has promised to help rebuild neighboring Syria and facilitate the return of millions of Syrian civil war refugees, and they played a key role last month in getting the U.S. and European sanctions on Syria lifted. So Syria owes Turkey an awful lot here. The newfound Turkish influence in Damascus has raised Israeli concerns and risk a standoff or worse in Syria because between the regional powers. And so Assad, of course, was working with Iran. Iran now is losing its influence. We had a story today where they're trying to put their influence back on Lebanon, but the new government is not very happy with Iran there, and it's moving closer and closer to Turkey. So bottom line is this. Turkey is positioning itself as a key player in the Middle East by supporting this new regime. And it fits perfectly into the predictions the Bible has of the last day of Turkey's role in the invasion of Israel. So here's what we're at right now. 3 major stories since this morning. First of all, Putin will not only respond to Ukraine's drone attack, but supposedly going to inject himself into the Iran-U.S. discussions, per Donald Trump. Trump is looking desperate to make a deal, but with the statement of the Ayatollah today, the only type of deal he could make would certainly not be what is needed. What's he going to do? He's got to answer the question. Now, what's keeping him from fulfilling his continued promises of making Iran pay for their refusal to stop enriching uranium with the goal of constructing many nuclear weapons? And then on the other end, Israel, again, remember, Israel was getting ready now to attack Iran if nothing came about with the discussions there between Iran and the U.S., and they either got some type of deal or they keep getting bogged down. Well, if the government dissolves, that may take away Netanyahu's power to form and to institute some type of attack on Iran. This is how bad it is. And so, like we said, it couldn't come at a worse time. It'll kill any momentum. He would still be prime minister, but only of a caretaker government. And at the same time, Turkey is not listening to Israel at all. And the Israelis are concerned about this, positioning itself for a primary role in the Middle East affairs with the support of the new Syrian government. So bottom line is, all in all, the players of this last day's biblical drama continue to move in the direction that the scriptures predict. It's amazing to see this every day, but it's certainly not surprising. And we're here with a grandstand seat of watching it happen. What has been predicted so much already by the Bible, so clearly predicting, and we see it all coming to pass. And thank God we're here for such a time as this to not only understand what's going on, but to preach and to tell others that this is something that is divinely ordained by God. There's an end game to all this, the second coming of Christ, many events that are going to precede it according to Scripture, and we're here witnessing all this take place right now. Great time to be alive, isn't it? I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.